Hare Krishna. Prabhupada has stayed in Prabhupada, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, everyone who comes. Chapter 7, text 14. Cantos. Hare Bol, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribhajakacharya Ashtotter Sadasi Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Janitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtikhi. Today we are reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 7, entitled Indra Offends Brihaspati, Text 14. Tesham kupata deshtrinam patatam tamasi yadaha Ye shraddhayur vachaste vai majjanti ashma plava iva tesham kupata deshtrinam patatam tamasi yada ye shraddhayur vachaste vai majjanti ashma plava iva tesham kupata destrinam patatam tamasi yadaha ye shraddhayur vachaste vai majjanti ashma plava iva tesham Matajis. Word to word meaning, Tesham, of them, the misleaders. Kupata Deshtrinam, who show the path of danger. Patatam, themselves falling. Tamasi, in darkness. He, indeed. Adaha, down. He, anyone who. Shraddhayuhu, place faith in. Vachaha, the words. Te, they. Vai, indeed. Majanti, sink. Ashma plava, boats made of stone. Eva, like. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Leaders who have fallen into ignorance and who mislead people by directing them to the path of destruction, as described in the previous verse, are, in effect, boarding a stone boat, and so too are those who blindly follow them. A stone boat would be unable to float and would sink in the water with its passengers. Similarly, those who mislead people go to hell, and their followers go with them. Purport. As stated in the Vedic literature, Bhāgavatam 11.20.17, Nirdehamadyam sulabham sudurlabham plavam sukalpam guru karnadharam. We, the conditioned souls, have fallen in the ocean of nescience, but the human body fortunately provides us a good opportunity to cross the ocean, because the human body is like a very good boat. When directed by a spiritual master acting as a captain, the boat can very easily cross the ocean. Furthermore, the boat is helped across by favorable winds, which are the instructions of Vedic knowledge. If one does not take advantage of all these facilities to cross the ocean of nescience, he is certainly committing suicide. One who boards a boat of stone is doomed. To be elevated to the stage of perfection, humanity must first give up false leaders who present boats of stone. All of human society is in such a dangerous position that to be rescued, it must abide by the standard instructions of the Vedas. The cream of these instructions appear in the form of Bhagavad Gita. One should not take shelter of any other instructions, for Bhagavad Gita gives direct instructions on how to fulfill the aim of human life. Lord Krishna therefore says, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Give up all other processes of religion and simply surrender unto me. Even if one does not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his instructions are so exalted and beneficial for humanity that if one follows his instructions, one will be saved. Otherwise, one will be cheated by unauthorized meditation and gymnastic methods of yoga. Thus, one will board a boat of stone which will sink and drown all its passengers. Unfortunately, although the American people are extremely eager to get out of material chaos, they are sometimes found to patronize the makers of stone boats. That will not help them. They must take the proper boat offered by Krishna in the form of the Krishna consciousness movement. Then they will be easily saved. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura comments, Ashmayamaha plavo yesham te yata majjantam plavam anumajjanti tatheti rajaniti upadreshtrushu sva sabhyeshu kopo vyajanjitaha. If this society is guided by political diplomacy, with one nation maneuvering against other, it will certainly sink like a stone boat. Political maneuvering and diplomacy will not save the human society. People must take to Krishna consciousness to understand the aim of life, to understand God, and to fulfill the human mission. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Current verse is text 14. Indra is continuing his repentance. I'll just read the verse 13 translation as well, just to get the context. If a person says, one who is situated on the exalted throne of a king should not stand up to show respect to another king or a brahmana, it is to be understood that he does not know the superior religious principles. So here we can see the head of the demigods, Lord Indra, being overcome by false ego, did not offer respect which is due for his spiritual master. It's quite fascinating to see just when the appropriate moment where we need to offer respect, the false ego covers. The presence of the super soul, the voice from the super soul will always be there to get up and pay respect. Anyone had the experience when you're about to do something wrong, you hear some warnings? You experience that? You hear some, hey, don't do that. But we may choose to listen to the internal guidance from the Chaitya Guru, because it's the Chaitya Guru sitting inside is manifesting outside as the spiritual master. But the covering of the false ego, in this case, it is covering Lord Indra. So he did not offer respects to Brihaspati at that particular time, the appropriate time. The different ways one can do it. Yesterday, His Grace Karunanidhi Prabhu explained nicely, depending on the time, place and circumstances, how one can do it. It is said that one has to stand up and offer respects. So with men we do Ashtanga Pranam, falling like a stick in front of the spiritual master. So when you're doing it, the hands, two hands, your forehead, your chest, your hips, your legs, all of that, that's why it's Ashtanga Pranam. So the hands, both the hands have to be touching the feet of the person who you are trying to offer respects to. So this is a point that we can keep in mind when we are paying obeisances. Men, Ashtanga Pranam, the two hands have to be on the floor, and in your mind you are touching the feet of the person who you are trying to offer obeisances to. For various reasons, if we have things in our hands when offering obeisances, we can keep them aside and try to offer obeisances with the two hands. There is an injunction where one should not offer obeisances with one hand. Why? Because then it becomes one, the anga, ashtanga is one becomes less. Women offer chaturanga namaskar. So if you're using only one hand, it becomes, women offer panchanga namaskar. So if you use only one hand, then it becomes chaturanga. So this is the injunction given by the Lord, that this is how it needs to be done. And these are coming to us in the form of the Vedas, the scriptural teachings. So one must be mindful of the physical action that he is doing, why is he doing it, and who is he doing it for. And when we are paying obeisances, the hands touch the person's feet. So the feet are going to be placed close by, so you don't offer obeisances with hands wide apart, you try to keep it close so that one hand your right hand touches the right feet of the person you're trying to offer obeisances to, your left hand touches the left feet of the person who you're trying to offer obeisances to. So keep it at that distance, and in your mind, even if the person who you are trying to offer obeisances to is not physically close to you, in your mind you assume that he is standing in front, and that's the internal mood. So you have an external action which also has to be proper. Ashtanga for men, Panchanga for women. And then there is an internal mood for offering obeisances. Now, how long would it have taken for Lord Indra to get up and offer obeisances? Just a moment. He gets up, offers obeisances, chants the pranam mantra, and then greets, welcomes him. It would have not taken more than a couple of minutes. So, during that period where you want to pay obeisances, but then the false ego is saying, you don't have to, come on, you are the Lord of the demigods. All of that is going on, and then that particular moment passes. So your spiritual master doesn't have to, he's not obliged that he should wait and receive your respects. It is said that a spiritual master is not materially obliged to take all those respects. Whether you give or not, he is not affected by it, he is not obliged that he should wait and receive your respect. Whereas it's the other way around. The disciple has a spiritual obligation that he has to pay those respects at the appropriate time. So here we see this, the appropriate moment has passed, and now Indra is starting to realize the gravity of the mistake that he has done. That's why in the morning we sing, Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, Yasya aprasadan na gati kutopi. So verse 10 talks about Indra quickly understanding, immediately could understand the mistake. So here we see one side Brihaspati, the guru of the demigods. He is seeing the imminent future of Indra suffering. Brihaspati checks himself not to curse Indra. He leaves the assembly. This reminds me of another episode where a person of a superior position, he was in the assembly, and then he was also cursed, and he checked, he did not react. He heard harsh words from a person who was in a bit inferior position, but he checked his anger, he did not speak, and he walked away. Do you recollect any such pastime from the Bhagavatam where Lord Shiva, he did not, and Daksha was speaking ill about him in the first instance, he did not, he just walked out of the assembly. In that case, Lord Shiva was not obliged to stand up or pay respects because he was meditating on Vasudeva. Forgot the verse. Bhagavan Vasudevo hi adokshajo me namasa vidiyate Sattvam visudvam vasudeva shabditam yadiyate yatra puman apavrita sattve cha tasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo hi adokshajo me namasa vidiyate. So he was meditating on Lord Vasudeva and he was paying respects to all living beings, the super soul inside those living beings also. So when we are paying respects, we are actually paying respects not only to the physical form of the person, but also the spirit soul and the super soul inside, inside them. So, Lord Shiva did not speak and then he walks away. So here we can see Brihaspati doing the same thing. He left the assembly and in silence returned to his home. So this whole scene is unfolding, and as Brihaspati is walking away, Indra realizes the mistake. Now he is starting the process of condemning himself in the presence of all the members of assembly. So when a mistake is made, for you to come back to senses, it takes a bit of a time, and during that time the appropriate time for offering respects would have passed. So later he starts condemning himself, because this disrespect is done in the assembly of other demigods. When you disrespect someone in the assembly of others, it is said that you have to ask forgiveness from the person in private, and also, if possible, in public, where you have actually done the mistake. Because I remember attending this session by His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Bhagavad Maharaj, where he discussed a complex scenario where you have offended a Vaishnava, and before you could ask forgiveness, the Vaishnava returns back to the abode of the Lord. So you can't ask forgiveness from him, he's gone to the abode of the Lord. But you have committed a mistake, and that too you have made a mistake offending him in public, and then that devotee, you didn't ask for forgiveness, and then the devotee returns to the abode of the Lord, then what will you do? So at that time Maharaj was explaining that to the well-wishers of the devotee who has passed away and who you have offended, you need to go and express the current situation, the gravity of the mistake that you have done. Then as a matter of glorifying the devotee, you should call all the other Vaishnavas, glorify him in the assembly, and also accept the mistake that you have done to that devotee, the gravity of the mistake that you have done. And then in front of the picture of the devotee who you have offended and who has passed away, you can pay your respects and beg for forgiveness, and also you have to do it in public. So that was the point that Maharaj was making. So here we can see the mistake done in public, and Lord Indra is also starting to repent and condemning himself. This anutapa, the heat of the repentance, brings tears in the eyes of the person who committed the offense. So if one is going through that heat of anutapa, tapa is fever, that feverish condition, that brings tears in his eyes, and you start to repent, you condemn yourself, you condemn your actions, your mentality, all of that, because action is a manifestation of the internal mentality. What was going on inside is manifesting outside. Indra could have checked, no, I should, however elevated I am, my spiritual master is above me, so I should offer respects to him. So that moment has passed, he did not do that action, proper action, and therefore now he is condemning himself in the presence of the members of the assembly. So he lists the reasons: lack of intelligence, pride, and material opulence. So high birth causing pride, high position causing pride, and then having a lot of opulence, that's also leading to pride. That is why those who don't have it, they are in a better position. And that's what Mother Kunti prays. Janmaishwarya Shutashribihi Etamana Matapuman Naivarhat Abhidatum Vai Tvam Akinchana Gocharam. One who is proud out of his Janma, Aishwarya, out of his wealth, of his learning ability, wealth, and his followers, he cannot feelingly offer prayers to you. Whereas a person who is deprived of all of this, he can feelingly offer prayers. Tvam akinchana gocharam. So Mother Kunti is addressing the Lord. Tvam, that's you, my Lord. You are the protector and well-wisher and the possession of this akinchana gocharam. They don't have any of these possessions, Janma, Aishwarya, Shuta, Shri. But if they feelingly offer prayer, so you are their possession. So here we can see Indra condemning himself. I have all of this. Because of I have all of this, they acted as curtains and they have blocked my vision. And because of that, I failed to offer respects. And I am in the position of a leader. So verse 13 is talking about the internal dialogue, the false ego giving reasons. One who is situated in the exalted throne of a king should not stand up to show respect to another king or a brahmana. So the internal tug of war is going on, and the reason given by false ego, which is fueled by intelligence, pride, material opulence, even though he is situated in the mode of goodness. So, fueled by all of these, the false ego gives a reason that was stated in yesterday's was one who is situated on the exalted throne of a king should not stand up to show respect to another king or a brahmana. So here is the typical internal struggle of a sadhaka. We can see that he has faith in the Lord, he knows the proper etiquette, but sometimes due to his attraction towards sense gratification, he is pulled on the other side. His spiritual wisdom becomes overcome by all of these curtains that we discussed. And then he commits a mistake. But he condemns himself. It is said that when such a devotee condemns himself and comes back and repents and takes proper action, such a person is eligible to continue practicing his sadhana. So this is a typical struggle that goes inside a sadhaka. And Lord Krishna, in the 11th canto, the verse which begins with Jata Shraddho Matkatasu Nirvinna Sarva Karmashu. In that verse, Lord Krishna in the translation, he encourages that the sadhaka should not shy away from this kind of a tug of war, which goes between his faith, his knowledge of proper etiquette, his practice of bhakti that he is doing against his previous samskars, his lower nature, and the circumstances that are pulling him. So there will always be a tug of war. So one should not doubt the process. One should not give up the process. But one should understand that the power of bhakti is so high that it is much higher than the amount of unwanted things that I have in my heart. So, I've heard this statement, don't tell Krishna how much problems you have or how big your problems are. Tell to your problems that how big Krishna is, how big the process of bhakti is. So, the sadhaka should not shy away from this kind of a tug-of-war which goes on, where he is pulled between his own divine and demoniac nature. Here we see Lord Indra, he is born, to get to the position of Indra is not that easy. He must have been situated in the mode of goodness, done so many austerities, pious activities for many lifetimes, and then now he has acquired that position. Being situated in the mode of goodness, that's what Indra says himself. But in the material world, the mode of goodness is not always pure. It has always got a tinge of passion and ignorance. So therefore, there is always a struggle, even at the level of demigods. So, coming back to this point where Krishna encourages the sadhaka to go on with this struggle with determination, with more enthusiasm, and in that section there is also this, he encourages the sadhaka who is a ajitendriyaha prayaha pragalpaya bhaktya vishayar nabi bhuyate. That's the second half of the verse. Yeah, so not able to recollect the entire verse. The sadhaka is ajitendriyaha. He has not controlled his senses, but he is continuing. So the purport describes that a warrior is fighting in the battle and he is fighting rigorously, but the arrows that are striking him are so harsh that at some stage he is bewildered. He doesn't know what to do. Whether should I continue fighting or just give up? At that time it is said that Krishna encourages that one should not shy away from this struggle. It's interesting that when Indra is trying to kill Vritrasura, Vritrasura will actually encourage Indra, because the weapons that Indra will try, everything Vritrasura will smash. At that time, as the weapons are falling from Indra's hands and it is becoming useless, Indra will lose his morale to fight. At that time, Vritrasura will encourage Indra, saying, pick up your weapon, I have faith in that weapon, use that weapon to kill me. It will certainly work because it is taken from one of the sage's bones, and that's how they'll make the whole weapon. Dadichi, yes, thanks. So, the sadhaka who's struggling is hit by those weapons, and Krishna is encouraging that even if you are hit by that, you are not able to control your senses, put faith in the process, continue with determination and renewed enthusiasm. There it is said that the warrior takes those arrows which are piercing his body, takes it away, puts it down, and then picks up his sword and again goes ahead for fighting. Prayaha pragalpaya bhaktya. So such a devotee, he will not be, in the end he will be victorious. He will not be overcome by sense gratification. So that describes the internal struggle which goes on in the life of a sadhaka. Now, for a sadhaka to go on with his struggle, and he needs a person who has the knowledge of the scriptures and who is going to take you to the right boat. And that person is the spiritual master. So in the items of bhakti, the first three items are like mandatory. What are those items? Taking shelter of a spiritual master. Then, when you take shelter, and then the next step is diksha. So the word diksha is divya gyan kshapayati. So the word divya gyan, from there the word di is taken. Kshapayati is one who destroys ignorance. And iksha means one who gives the eyes by which you can see the proper, you can see the world as it is, and you can see the spiritual world, you can see the spiritual process, you can practice. So he gives that, Guru gives that, that's why it's called Diksha. Your ignorance is destroyed and you get a vision to see matter, spirit, the Lord, what's your connection, what's your relationship with the material world, what is your relationship with the Supreme Lord, what's your relationship with the other living entities. So here we see the famous verse, Nirdeha Madhyam Sulabham Sudurlabham Plavam Sukalpam Guru Karna Dharam. Other forms of life, like a dog or a hog or cat, they cannot take up a spiritual master. But the human form of life is said to be the good boat. And the spiritual master who is opening the eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, so you take shelter, then you get initiated, that's the second step. Then you serve him with Vishrambena Guroho Seva. You serve him with faith, confidence, and in a friendly mood. This friendly mood is not like a friend as in buddy, you put hands on the... But the mentality is more friendly, Vishrambena, with faith in the words. So the faith in the spiritual master will improve, will increase to the extent that you hear his words. That's why there is a whole process within ISKCON to take shelter. Then you continue the process of hearing. You get initiated. Now, at the time of initiation, what you receive is the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of devotion. Now, Nectar of Devotion and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, they describe that the potential for doing bhakti, the bhava, the emotions are there, that potential is there in every person. The spiritual master sees this potential, and those who are more serious, then he allows them to take shelter. You are more serious, more committed, then you are given Diksha. At the time of Diksha, this is what you receive, is that Bhakti Lata Bij. So, in the section where the creeper of devotion and all of that is discussed, so the Bhakti Lata Bij is described. What is it that exactly, what am I receiving on the day of initiation is this Bhakti Lata Bij. And the purport explains that you are receiving from the spiritual master the correct methods, the correct rules and the regulations. Because the spiritual master is the one who is able to tell you from the scriptures, these are the rules that you need to follow, these are the prohibitions that you need to avoid. So, the potential is there for Bhava Bhakti in everybody, but the spiritual master gives you the methods, the tools, the rules and the regulations, Vidhi, Nisheda, so that you can practice it. That's what it means to accept him as a captain, so you follow his directions. And within the Vedas you have rules, Vidhi and Nisheda, prohibitions and regulations, which you need to follow, what you need to follow, what you need to avoid. It is a spiritual master who tells you, who gives you, these are the set of rules that you need to follow, these are the prohibitions that you need to avoid. And that will make sense why the prohibitions we recite them at the time of taking initiation. I will avoid 4 things. What are the 4 things? What will you avoid? What are you committing to? Huh? No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. Okay, so that's the prohibition. So what is the regulation? What else do you commit to? Minimum 16 rounds of chanting. So that's what you're committing to, and the Vidhi and Nisheda are given. That's what you receive, Bhakti Lata Bij. That's what constitutes the Bhakti Lata Bij. So you should know what we are receiving from the captain, and one has to faithfully execute that. So at the time of Diksha, this is what is happening. Then the captain tells you, for the favorable winds, they tell you this is favorable, this is unfavorable. Now, Nectar of Devotion describes that the inspiration to practice bhakti actually comes from the Lord. But it gets channelized through the spiritual master, and he tells you how to channel your energy, your inspiration, your motivation. How do you engage your body? How do you engage your mind? How do you engage your words? How do you not engage your body, not engage your mind, not engage your words? So he gives these prohibitions and rules from the scriptures, because the topmost of all of that, the essence of all of that is Smartavya Satatam Vishnu Vismartavyona Jatusit Sarve Vidhi Nishedasyur Etayor Eva Kinkara. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. This is the essence. So, if you see the instructions which are coming to you, do this, don't do this. These things, when you follow, it will enhance your remembrance of Krishna. And these actions, when you do, they will take away the remembrance of Krishna. It will make you forget Krishna. So the prohibitions, rules are there in the scriptures, that is acting as a favorable wind. And then the spiritual master as a captain helps you to maneuver your boat in this material existence so that you can reach the other side up to the extent of going up to the Vaitarani river, which is at the border of material and the spiritual worlds, and then go past it, enter the spiritual world and do favorable service to the Lord. And this is what the spiritual master does, and that's what he gives at the time of initiation. And the disciple agrees to stick to the words of the captain so that he can maneuver his boat properly. I'm taking few steps back. How did I get to this point where I put faith in the words and I come to this point of accepting a spiritual master and all of that? What is happening in the background is that the topic of faith is one of the word-to-word meaning is there. Shraddhayuhu, place faith in. How are you able to place the faith in a particular person and you're dedicating your whole life? What has happened before? The steps before that is you must have definitely done some pious activities. Those pious activities which will facilitate your bhakti. It's called Bhakti Unmukha Shukriti. Those pious actions which are going to lead you to gain bhakti are called as Bhakti Unmukha Shukriti. Because you can do pious activities to elevate yourself to heaven, you can give in charity, give clothing, and all that builds up your material piety. But if you do the same thing to a sadhu, to a Vaishnava, to a Vishnu temple, you're giving funds or you're protecting the sadhus, depending on your situation in the varnashrama. As a Kshatriya, you might have given shelter or you would have protected a sadhu, Vaishnava saint. Or as a Vaishya, you would have given a donation to Vishnu temples, or you would have fed the Vaishnava saints. Or as a Shudra, you might have rendered some menial service to the Vaishnava saints. So it keeps building up, and it reaches a point where it matures to faith. Now, before it matures to faith, you are doing these activities without knowing that you are building Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti. That's why it's called Agyata Sukriti. Gyata means knowingly doing, Gyata Sukriti. Agyata Sukriti means unknowingly doing all these activities. At this point, you are not actively seeking the association of the sadhus. So they come to your place and they give their association and you protect them or you serve them or whatever it is. And you may unknowingly go to a Vishnu temple, put some donation, or unknowingly donate money to sadhus. Unknowingly you're doing it, matures and reaches a point of faith, and then these steps follow. You take among the sadhus who you continuously hear, you pick up one, you ask them if they can accept you in their shelter, then the Diksha and serving with faith. Now after Diksha, what happens is you actively do Sadhu Sangha. You actively, after Shraddha comes Sadhu Sangha. So the difference of the Sadhu Sangha earlier and the Sadhu Sangha after gaining faith is that after faith is mature, you go out and actively seek Sadhu Sangha. I want to hear these lectures, I want to go to temple, which means that the faith is matured enough that you are actively seeking, because earlier you are not actually seeking. That's why when the disciples of Prabhupada asked, how did we get the Sukriti? Prabhupada says, I gave you the Sukriti. Because Prabhupada, no one from the US sponsored Prabhupada to come and visit them and do spiritual lectures or give talks. He, on the instruction of his spiritual master and inspired by the 6 Goswamis and the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we can see how the mercy of Mahaprabhu flows to the heart of the 6 Goswamis, where Mahaprabhu transfers that mercy, gives it to the Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. That's why we have Sanatana Siksha and Rupa Siksha. And when Srila Prabhupada was in the Radha Damodar temple and doing his bhajan, doing his austerities, it is said that those who were living with Srila Prabhupada in that temple at that particular time, they have seen and they have heard how Prabhupada was intensely praying in the early morning hours to get the mercy of the 6 Goswamis. Especially Srila Rupa Goswami, he used to sweep the quarters in the Samadhi, pray for mercy, and Rupa Goswami appears to Srila Prabhupada and then encourages him to go to the West. So that's why we see the mercy transferring from Mahaprabhu to the 6 Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami. From Rupa Goswami's heart, it gets transferred to Srila Prabhupada. He is also getting instructions by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, blessings he gets. And then Srila Prabhupada, travels to the West and he goes and gives his association. No one called him, no one sponsored him, no one paid for his flight. He took a boat. He took that biggest risk because he is fully surrendered. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. So the symptoms of surrender is that one of the symptoms is avashya rakshabe Krishna vishwasha palan. No matter what circumstances, Krishna will protect. So, exhibiting all of that qualities of surrender, Prabhupada comes to the West, sees the gravity of the situation that he is in. That's why we have the songs that he writes. My dear Lord, you have put them in the mode of passion and ignorance. And if you so desire, you can only relieve them. And I am not qualified. You make my words powerful enough to cut through this passion and ignorance and deliver them. So here we see, Prabhupada going and actively giving his Sangha, his association, and thereby, after many years of struggle where he himself has to cook, clean, go out, all of that he was doing in the West. Then he is distributing the mercy. So imagine eating prasadam cooked by Srila Prabhupada's hands, the potency of that. That goes in ISKCON bullets. As we can see, bullets are going and they are getting fired and it's having the effect. So the Western devotees, later they ask, Swamiji, can we help you? You're doing all of this by yourself, can we help you? All right, there begins their Shukriti. They already started. Now what goes in, the prasadam, is the consciousness goes in and that transforms the person. Because the internal what goes in, it affects your consciousness. There's a purport in either the 6th chapter of the Gita or somewhere it says the effect of consciousness, the effect of the food, how it affects the consciousness. Smriti labdva, that will say, your memory becomes purified, your consciousness becomes purified. Because they have been eating from the hands of Prabhupada, they're getting all of that, coming and hearing, and now they're asking, can we help you? What can we do? So then that it begins. There's also a pastime where in the 26th Avenue, when the Prabhupada is giving a talk, then a man in his rags, he walks in. Other devotees are a bit concerned. He comes near and then he is carrying some toilet tissue. So he goes to the toilet, puts the toilet tissues there and goes. So Prabhupada says, see, he has begun. He has begun his process. So it accumulates, all of this Agyata Sukriti accumulates, bhakti-related Sukriti accumulates, and then it matures to faith, and then we saw the whole process, how you take up shelter, Diksha, and then Vishrambena, Guru Seva. Here is where we can understand that the Western civilization, how much propaganda is going on to promote the material boat, which is described in the purport, that the material boat, so much of propaganda is going on, and if you see the number, if you just go by the numbers, so the amount of people who are advertising, propagating all of this material enjoyment, they are in one side, and here is a sadhu, a Vaishnava saint, coming from India, from Vrindavan, the purity of this just one person versus the entire propaganda of the West. And if you see the numbers, this one person, Senapati Bhakta, goes and defeats all of them. Why? Because what he is speaking is the absolute truth. What others are giving is their own opinions, their own interpretations, their own mundane promotion of the material enjoyment. So one person goes and speaks the absolute truth and defeats all of them and convinces these devotees in the Western body to take up the process. And their faith shifts from the material, the stone boat, to the solid boat of the process of bhakti. So here it says, unfortunately, although American people are extremely eager to get out of material chaos, they are sometimes found to patronize the makers of stone boats. That will not help them. They must take the proper boat offered by Krishna in the form of the Krishna consciousness movement. So this Shraddhayu, placing faith in. So earlier they were placing faith in the stone boat. Due to the materialistic propaganda fueled by political diplomacy, one nation maneuvering against another. So this line reads like a prophecy. It's happening right now. One nation maneuvering against another. So when Prabhupada was writing all of that, the youth in the US, they were not in favor of the Vietnam War. So it is reading like a prophecy now, where we see two nations are fighting against each other, guided by political diplomacy. The solution is the boat offered by Krishna in the form of Krishna consciousness movement. So Prabhupada changes the faith of the people in the West from their materialistic way of life. Because why are you doing it? Because you have faith in that. You think that that's the purpose of life and that's the aim of life. It's called Chapala Shuka. It leaves you high and dry. It makes you big promises but delivers a little. The Prabhupada goes and gives the experience of bhakti, which is the higher taste, and changes the faith of the Western devotees from materialistic enjoyment to the spiritual path. That he does through the scriptures of Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. That's why the second purpose of ISKCON, the first purpose is to propagate, educate, and give spiritual techniques to check the imbalance of the society at large and thereby unite them. The second purpose is to you doing all of this not based on your fertile imagination but based on Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And that's why Prabhupada is glorifying Bhagavad Gita here. The cream of these instructions appear in the form of Bhagavad Gita. Sarva Upanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha. So it's there in the Bhagavad Gita. One should not take shelter of any other instructions, for Bhagavad Gita gives direct instructions on how to fulfill the aim of human life. So that's why it's there in the seven purposes to check the imbalance of the society, and you're doing it based on Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Thereby you can understand and fulfill the mission of human life, understand the aim of life, understand who God is, and understand and fulfill the human mission. So thus we learnt lessons from the actions of Lord Indra, Indra is going through the situation, our turn may come anytime, or we might be committing the same mistakes ourselves. It's good to learn from others' mistakes. We saw the internal tug of war of a struggling sadhaka, how one has to go on, the voice of the divine and the voice of the demoniac which comes inside you. Once you take shelter of the spiritual master, you strengthen your divine side, you weaken your demoniac side, and you take up more serious bhakti than how we saw how you progress, how the Shraddha matures from Agyata Sukriti to faith. Then you actively seek sadhu sangha. Then what you receive is the Bhakti Lata Bij, which are the methods, the rules and the regulations, what to do, what not to do, so that you always remember Krishna, never forget Him. We also saw the power of the spiritual master, the spiritual board that he has, the potency carried by Srila Prabhupada to transform the people in the West, and the potency of Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So I'll conclude here and see if there are any questions on what we discussed. If there are no questions, we'll conclude here. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktavrinda ki jai. Nirdehamadyam Sulabam Sudurlabam